Damien, thanks ever so much for joining us. How's things?
Pretty good, thanks. Thanks for having me along.
No worries. So 2020, been a pretty unforgettable year for everyone, not least because of a global pandemic, but also because what has felt like an endless series of back-to-back fastest known times being broken across the UK. Now you kicked things off with your record-breaking solo, unsupported Winter Paddy Buckley round. At the time you did it, did you have any inkling of what on earth was going to happen with the rest of the year?
No, looking back, they seem such innocent times, don't they? Yeah, wasn't life strange back then in a way, because we've got used to a different type of life. We've just gone into a sort of second lockdown. No, and I suppose it's weird. I thought that would probably be my one sort of FKT of the year, and I'm not saying I'm a trendsetter or anything, but everyone started copying me. I didn't plan. I got two more FKTs in later in the year, but I didn't necessarily plan to do either of those this year. But no, I mean, the year started off. Yeah, I mean, that was a great, exciting adventure for me, and really grateful I could do that at the time. But yeah, that was mid-late February. So we still had little idea. Yeah, we had, I think in the news at the time, there was, things happening in China, but China's a long way away. And I don't think any of us knew what was coming really. So yeah, it does feel like a long time ago.
I guess like on the note of your plans, so obviously the Paddy Buckley's pretty good start to the year. What were your plans originally for that point onwards? And how did they go about changing as a result of the COVID, crisis?
Yeah, I almost can't remember. I was definitely planning on UTMB in late August. What was I planning as a build-up for that?
It does feel like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, I think I was going to do UTS, Ultra Trail Snowdonia, which I think was meant to be in June, I think. Yeah, I honestly even can't. So, I mean, this was always going to be a bit of a different year for me because I'd felt really bad about, sorry to bring up the climate stuff early on, but the previous year I had flown abroad quite a lot to a lot of exciting races, and I had a realization that I didn't feel happy continuing to do that. It didn't feel responsible. I'm fully aware other people had thought of that a long time before me, but I suddenly was like, I can't carry on just flying to 4 or 5 races a year. That's not responsible. That's not fair. That's not right. So I was always going to do more domestic things, more FKT type things. But I think just that winter one for this year, UTMB was going to be the big goal. I think I was going to do UTS in sort of June-ish. I genuinely can't remember if I was going to do something else in kind of April-ish, May-ish. I probably was. What was it? Yeah. Oh, yes, actually. Okay. So much as I said I didn't want to fly away, I had one flight. I was going to fly to Japan to do Ultra Trail Mount Fuji. That was going to be my one flight of the year, and I'm aware that's a big one. And I had spoken to. I'd already kind of offset it. I know that's not perfect, but that's one of the best things we can do at the moment. So I was going to do that. That was late April. So I think when it started to become clear in March that might not happen, I started to get this idea that, this might not be a normal year, or at least might not be a normal kind of summer at least.
How to make the best of a bad situation, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, but around that time in March, it just so happened that me and John Kelly. So John Kelly lives, for those who don't know, he's American, but I live in Wiltshire, but only just inside Wiltshire, right on the border with Somerset, and he lives in Somerset. We probably live less than an hour apart, but we both got young families, so we don't actually meet up all that often. But we had met up and gone to the Brecon Beacons. This is in late March. It was the same day that the thankfully soon departing president of America announced there was a travel ban from Europe. So it was quite a big moment actually of, things are really, really going to change. And we were both thinking about that and talking about that quite a lot. And he had already, I think he'd already told me he was going to have a go at the Pennine Way record. And I, in that same conversation, whether it was just before or on that road or on that day, I can't quite remember, but I said, oh, I've often thought about doing that, and then usually just put it off because it intimidated me a lot. But I was impressed that he was going to, he has more sort of confidence than me, and more, he goes, right, I'm going to go and do that. I'm going to go and do, this huge thing. And it takes me a couple of years to build up to it, really. But he said he was going to do that. And on the way back, I think I said, look, if UTMB ends up getting cancelled, I think I might, I hope you don't mind. I think I might have a go as well. And then he quite quickly, I think by the time I got home, I had a message from him saying, we could do it together. And then I replied with, I think, what if we went from opposite ends at the same time? Now, over time, logistics with lockdown, logistics with crews, we didn't quite arrange it that way. And if I'm honest, sometimes I thought it was a good idea. Sometimes I thought it wasn't a good idea for me in terms of me achieving my best run on it. But yeah, so that March was quite a big moment. I mean, as it was for a lot of people when I suppose they were beginning to realise the severity of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the positives potentially, and going back to the matter of climate, it's interesting because I know that you're always cautious by saying the C word because if you ever were to mention it on social media, it does seem like it can spark something of a severe response, shall we say, within your audience or an audience that is out there looming somewhere. But one of the positives of this year I see as being a lot of people who may have gone elsewhere have kind of looked inwards as to what we have within the UK and actually made the most of it. I mean, I've just jotted down, some of the things that, I mean, these are all the record-breaking attempts. These aren't even just the people who've been out just doing stuff on their own back, but we've got obviously 2 Pennine Way records having been broken. We've got the women's Coolin Ridge record. We've got the British men's Bob Graham record. We've got the women's Bob Graham record. We've got the Ramsey Round record, the men's and the women's I can't even say them, there's too many. There's blooming loads of records, and I could carry on going. And I guess what would be interesting, and it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on this, as to whether you think that will continue on with the same level of maybe vibrancy beyond this year, maybe, and travel restrictions easing again?
Yeah, I hope so. It looks, well, we've had this news in the last couple of days about maybe a vaccine, but I think still next year is going to be uncertain for a lot of people in lots of ways, and certainly races. We're not really sure what will be on. But then I think you've got another and something else altogether, which is it may well have changed people's attitudes, myself included, of do we need to go abroad to do exciting things? I mean, I think it'd be wrong to think, I mean, I'm going to, I will still go abroad sometimes. It's too much to resist, isn't it? We've got so many exciting, Europe on our doorstep. But I'm going to certainly travel less. I was already sort of committed to that. And this has only made me feel that Britain has, fantastic adventures right on our doorstep to do. And I think a lot of people have realised that. And often, when I was a lot younger, I remember travelling a lot in Latin America and had a really exciting time. But actually, one of my best adventures was just when I got back to Britain. I walked the Coast to Coast walk. This is over a decade ago. But actually, that was, in many ways, just as good an adventure for me, for various reasons, than all the travelling I'd done overseas. And sometimes it's not necessarily where you are. It's kind of, I don't know, how you create the adventure yourself and how much you test yourself sometimes. But there are all sorts of ways to, explore, have adventures, have almost internal adventures on the British Isles. And yeah, we're pretty lucky, some other countries have got bigger mountains and so on, but some have smaller mountains and no mountains. So we are pretty lucky when we think about it. We've got this wonderful coast as well. We're pretty lucky here.
So going back to the Pennine Way, so yourself and John, you say you went for a run, you were chatting about the possibility of doing it. Now, this is before either of you had obviously got on to break the record, and Mike Hartley's long-standing and legendary record was still in place. I mean, this is like one of the unbeatables, I would say, or perceived as being this unbeatable record. How did that weight hang over your combined shoulders?
Yeah, I mean, to give you the full story, I suppose, like I'd hiked the Pennine Way 9 years ago, and I'd actually written a guidebook for it. So I had this real emotional investment, and I suppose professional investment in a way in it. Like, and I absolutely love it. I love the sort of almost the bleakness of it. And I did that after living most of a decade abroad. So it really made me fall back in love with Britain. And it's such a British landscape up there. The moors, and I was like, wow, this is, it is quite unique habitat. I'm pretty sure it's 75% of the world's heather moorland is in Britain, for example. And we could go further into that, and actually moorland, it isn't that natural, actually. It's our ancestors many years ago chopped down the trees, sadly, as they had on much of Britain. But I'm getting sidetracked and forgetting what I was on about. But and then it was about 4 years ago that I did my first kind of record run on the Southwest Coast Path, and just after that, it was kind of what next, and that was when I first started thinking about the Pennine Way. But yeah, simply how good the record was is what put me off, and reading about Mike Hartley and thinking, wow, this guy, he wasn't just some sort of tough old fell-running warhorse who stuck at it. He was a genuinely talented athlete who set a blistering time. So for a long time, I just thought, I'm not in that class of runner. There's no way I could do that. And then I suppose over time, I learned more about training, got good results here and there, and you slowly build a bit of confidence. But then John doing it as well gave me a nudge. I feel like I was always going to have a go, or at least for the last 2 or 3 years, I was going to at some point. But John, having a friend go, I'm going to do it, why not, kind of thing, did almost shame me into going kind of, he doesn't know it as well as me. Admittedly, he's done the spine race and done very well on it, but so he knew it to an extent. But he wasn't too intimidated by Mike Hartley's run. He was willing to give it a go. So there's part of me going, oh, okay, well, if he is willing to, then maybe I could. But even then, you're talking about one of the very few people in the world who's finished the Barclay. So it took me some courage almost to think of myself at the same level as John and Mike. I'm still a bit sort of surprised at how it worked out in a way, but yeah, it took me a long time to build up to it. I was maybe almost too intimidated by the history of it, I suppose.
Well, this is from a climber's perspective, but I've attended various international meets over the years, and one of the best things about climbing with people from abroad is that they're not weighed down by some of those things like long-standing records like we are. They become real big things for us. In climbing, it's often on-sighting a route, or in, I guess, fastest known times, it's trying to beat that record. So maybe for John, as an American, he was free from the shackles of such expectation. On the note of John, so the question I have is, how on earth do you two manage to have such what outwardly appears to be a cordial relationship, like good friends, when obviously there's an element of the competitive to beat each other's record?
I do think that's an interesting point you make, by the way, and the sort of cultural differences. It'd be interesting to see if there's something in that, because before John had even got to Britain, he was like, I'm not just going to run one of the rounds, I'm going to run all three and cycle between them. Like, he'd said that before he even got here. He had been to Britain before, but to see someone have that sort of confidence was a bit like, whoa, both possibly for some people, both positive and negative, I suppose, there must be some people thinking, he doesn't know our hills, he doesn't, that's not possible. And some people just going, whoa, why haven't I even thought of that? Like, no one had even tried that. Mike Hartley, ironically enough, had run all three, but been driven between them, which was like the height of what anyone in Britain had tried to do in that respect. But yeah, it's really interesting, I think, and maybe we do disadvantage ourselves a little bit in that sort of classic classic British, whatever it is. But I think John has helped me at least, to try and push out of that. What was the main question again?
I have absolutely no idea. Yeah, are you still friends? I think was basically.
Oh, that was it. I like to think so. Yes, no, I think I've got some evidence he still sees me as a friend, and I've got no reason to sort of not. I went out afterwards and helped him on the grand round, the second half of it on the Paddy Buckley. I did two legs of that with him. He may not know I had several of his donuts during that attempt. So he knows that he might change his mind. But no, John's actually an incredibly generous person in lots of ways, actually, and just very inspiring to be around. And I must admit, for a long time, I thought I would be going first on the Pennine Way, and I just thought he would beat me. I just thought he's a better athlete, he has more accomplishments, he will beat me. So I actually wanted to go first, so that at least I could be the one who said they broke the record that had stood for 31 years. And I thought, well, even if he comes along a week later, I can always say I broke the record for, that stood for that long. But I suppose it happened the other way. But I can only say I broke a record that stood for 8 days, which doesn't sound nearly as impressive, does it? But he may well get his own back on me next year, and if I can help him, I will.
Throughout the process of the two of you running it, you were filmed by Summit Fever Media for the film that's going to be released at Kendal in just a few weeks' time. Totally FKT, fantastic name. And so, what's it all about? And we were going to ask whether it is a fun experience, but I'm not sure. Is running the Pennine Way fun in the conventional sense of the word?
Well, I must admit I haven't seen the film yet, so I'm not totally sure. But I've worked with Matt and Ellie from Summit Fever Media many times. They've been very, they're very, very good friends of mine. I met them on the Spine Race, which they film every year. Chances are, if you've watched any race video from any kind of any UK race, to be honest, they've probably created it. I do know they've been interviewing lots of people. Especially what was interesting is they there were several people who helped both me and John, especially people like Nikki Ligo, who crewed for John and then jumped in and helped with my crewing as well. So there are some people who have got some really in-depth sort of insight into I suppose what happened, what the differences were, because I think me and John are very different characters, and I think that's what they're trying to sort of show. But yeah, it'd be really interesting, and I certainly wasn't at my best at many moments. I was probably very grumpy and whingy and self-pitying, and they were pretty much there all the time recording it. So I'm kind of dreading seeing it. Well, excited to see it, but dreading it as well. I'm sure it will paint a fair picture of what a pathetic, miserable human being I can be at times.
I don't believe it for a minute, Damien. Whilst you were doing your Pennine Way record, you were raising money for Greenpeace and admirably managing to litter pick whilst en route. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. I just feel a bit kind of, what's the word? I don't know. Upset, radicalized, worried, anxious about our climate and ecological emergency. And I just thought, as kind of like as an athlete, what can I do? What can I do better? I suppose the obvious one is fly less. I've changed my diet quite a lot. I'm not kind of fully vegan yet, but I'm sort of heading that way. And obviously, lots of people have been that way inclined for a long time. And it was just interesting. All three of my FKTs this year, I've done them without any animal products and without creating any plastic waste. Now, the first one's really easy. The second one is actually quite difficult. If you think of, all that hill food we have that has plastic packaging, a lot of it not recyclable. So that was actually kind of fun to just research and be able to do, and a lot more difficult, as I say. And the third one was to pick up litter as we went, which was kind of almost an afterthought, but that got seemed to get me more attention than any other aspect of the run. So I was very lucky. My pacers, if I'm honest, did almost all of the litter picking, and there wasn't huge amounts up on the hill. We were quite pleased in a way. It was quite reassuring. But yeah, as you might imagine, near some of the towns, there was a little bit. But what can? I don't want to be preachy about that, and I know people have been picking up litter for ages. There are people like Runners versus Rubbish on Twitter who do a great job and have arranged like big relays of litter picking, which are amazing. And there are so many angles we can sort of almost attack the sort of climate emergency from. I suppose, and also there's the sort of political stuff and then the personal stuff. And I do honestly think that aiming at the political stuff will have more impact. And that is, I suppose, getting involved with people like Greenpeace and Extinction Rebellion. And often that's, as simple as sending emails to your MP. I know that sounds a bit old-fashioned, but it does get recorded. To me, it is still worth doing. And there are obviously other ways to campaign as well, as Extinction Rebellion show. I mean, in terms of lifestyle stuff, diet and travel are the big ones, but even in our own houses, it's very easy to switch to a renewable energy supplier such as Bulb or Ecotricity. I did that in about 5 minutes and even saved a little bit of money. Cutting down plastic is almost a separate issue, but I mean, one little thing we did was instead of buying plastic milk or other cartons, we went to an old school milk delivery service, which comes in glass, which is obviously slightly better. I don't want to be one of those annoying, preachy, lectury people, and there's lots more I could do. But I think see it in terms of progress rather than perfection, because a state of being sort of doing everything perfectly and ethical probably isn't realistic. But we can probably all do a little bit more. But definitely our politicians could do a lot more.
That's a great place to start, anyway, Damien. Thanks ever so much for joining us, though. And I'm aware the internet connection hasn't been ideal.
Right? So I can't hear either of you properly. But
oh no. Well, right, we'll leave it there. But
brill.
Thanks ever so much for joining us.